Speed and Nguyen's Deep Dive podcast is an official podcast made by Speed and Nguyen with the voice made from Google's Notebook LM. Do not reproduce our podcast without permissions from the owner. Welcome to the Speed and Nguyen's Deep Dive podcast. Today, we're really diving into a film that's, well, it certainly stirred up a lot of conversation. Marvel Studios, Captain America, Brave New World. We've got a fascinating stack of sources you shared. I mean, everything from lively Reddit threads and those very first critic reactions, all the way to some really detailed reports about the, let's say, challenges during production.
Yeah, some deep dives into the behind-the-scenes stuff for sure.
So our mission today is to unpack all of this, pull out the key insights, and try to figure out why. Why did this movie get such passionate and often, completely opposite responses? We'll look at the audience's mixed feelings, dig into those big shifts during production, and, think about what this all means for the MCU going forward, because it went from being called an absolute blast to slightly empty. That's quite a range. Okay, let's get into it.
It really is striking when you look at it. The initial reactions, like you said, the spectrum is just huge.
Yeah.
We saw sources calling it that absolute blast. But then you also got these much more measured takes. Things like slightly empty, mid, even just serviceable.
Serviceable, yeah. Not exactly a ringing endorsement for a Captain America movie.
Exactly. And some folks were, pleasantly surprised, saying it was better than expected or not bad at all, which, again, kind of tells its own story for the MCU these days.
Right.
But then, on the flip side, you had people calling it a major disappointment. Some even went as far as saying it was the worst film of 2025. I mean, that's a really wide split.
That phrase, slightly empty, it's so interesting. What does that even mean? Does it mean it was mostly full?
Right. Like 90% full.
Or is it just a polite way of saying it didn't quite hit the mark, left you wanting more? It really makes you ask, what's considered good enough for a superhero film now?
Especially for Marvel.
Especially for Marvel. The expectations used to be consistently high, groundbreaking even. Has good enough or serviceable become the new baseline? And is that sustainable?
Well, that ambiguity, I think, you see it reflected directly in the critical scores. Our sources point to that rotten 48% on Rotten Tomatoes.
Oof.
Yeah, and to put that in context, that makes it the second worst rated MCU film.
Right.
Just a hair above Ant-Man and the Wasp, Quantumania, which had 47%. That's pretty telling about how critics are feeling.
But then, okay, the box office numbers seem to paint a slightly, maybe more complex picture. It wasn't a complete bomb.
No, not a complete bomb. It did cross $200 million here domestically, and the projection is around $415 million globally.
Okay, so decent money, but how does that stack up against other Cap films?
That's the key. It's actually the second lowest grossing Captain America film. It did beat the first Avenger, but it's way, way behind Winter Soldier and Civil War, significantly behind.
Right, huge gap there.
But to add another layer, while it lagged behind its predecessors, it did manage to outgross some other recent lower performers in the MCU, like the Marvels, The Incredible Hulk, Eternals.
Okay.
Still, it didn't quite reach Quantumania's global total, and definitely not Shang-Chi, which was seen as a real win post-pandemic.
So you've got this weird mix, critically rotten, but financially moderate. Not a disaster, not a smash hit. What does that signal about audience expectations now, years after Endgame?
Yeah, what does it mean?
The MCU used to feel almost untouchable, right? Immune to bad reviews. Is that changing? Is serviceable just not cutting it anymore, especially when people can wait for streaming?
I think that's a really critical point. That whole idea of the MCU being critic-proof or fatigue-proof, that seems to be fading.
Yeah.
Audiences and critics, they seem to want more now than just, basic competence. They're looking for that spark again, the innovation, the strong characters, the consistent quality that really defined Marvel's peak. In a film like Brave New World, getting this kind of mixed reaction, it suggests maybe that huge bank of goodwill they built up is starting to thin out a bit. Each movie is being judged more on its own now.
Which puts a ton of pressure on what comes next.
Exactly.
And speaking of pressure, let's shift from the reactions out front to what was happening behind the curtain, because the sources suggest this production was rocky, to say the least.
Oh, absolutely. Not a smooth ride at all. We're talking about major rewrites, extensive reshoots.
We've since sensed
like 22 days of reshoots back in June 2024, and then even more pickups later in November. Plus, you see multiple writers credited, which can sometimes be a sign of trouble.
Right.
And Rob Edwards got a story by credit because his changes apparently had a really significant impact on the plot.
Wow. So when a film goes through that much change, that kind of overhaul, What does that do to the final movie? Does it hang together? Does the tone feel consistent?
That's always the worry, isn't it? Does it feel cohesive or more like patchwork? And some of the specific changes mentioned in the sources are pretty wild.
Like the Serpent Society, I heard they were supposed to be a much bigger deal.
Totally. The original plan was for 5 distinct members, super-powered, cybernetic enhancements, unique abilities. Seth Rollins as King Cobra, maybe spitting acid. Rosa Salazar as Diamondback shooting projectiles.
Whoa.
And this big opening fight scene planned for a Mexican airport. Very different from what we got.
Which was more like generic henchman in a monastery, led by Sidewinder.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
And the funny thing is, those McDonald's toys came out way early, showing the original, more elaborate designs.
Classic merchandise spoiling the original plan.
It's a telltale sign of a production with shifting sands. And it wasn't just the villains. The leader, Samuel Stearns.
Yeah, Tim Blake Nelson back.
Originally, he was meant to have his classic comic book big head look.
Yeah.
We saw concept art, early merch.
Right, I remember seeing some of that.
But they changed it dramatically, went for something more grounded, maybe edgy, described as like a gross gamma tumor. And Tim Blake Nelson apparently had to reshoot all his scenes because of this massive change in his character's appearance.
All of them. That's a huge undertaking and expensive.
Absolutely. And then there's the whole Red Hulk resolution. That seems like another massive shift.
Yeah. What was the original plan there?
Sources say the initial idea involved adamantium. Captain America was going to use it somehow to absorb Ross's gamma powers, leading to his death. There was even a funeral scene planned, which is where Liv Tyler's cameo as Betty Ross came in.
Okay, that's dramatic. Very different from talking him down.
Very different. The final version, has Cap basically talking Ross out of being Red Hulk. A lot of people online, especially on Reddit, found that really anticlimactic.
The talk no jitsu, as some called it.
Exactly. And instead of dying, Ross just ends up locked away in the Raft prison. It's a complete 180 on his fate.
Wow. And were there other characters cut or changed too?
Yeah, quite a few mentions. Helen Cho's son, Amadeus Cho, apparently he was added in reshoots, investigating some gamma pills. There was even a post-credit scene setting him up as Brawn, his Hulk persona from the comics.
But that got cut?
All cut. Gone. And Ruth, the character Sabra, originally she was meant to have mutant powers, but those were removed. She became just a regular ex-Black Widow, basically a highly skilled agent.
Any idea why?
Well, the sources suggest it might have been tied to the character's origins in the comics. Sabra is an Israeli agent, and giving her powers might have waded into sensitive political territory the studio wanted to steer clear of.
Ah, okay. That makes sense, potentially.
Even Isaiah Bradley, who has such a powerful backstory in the MCU already, he was originally meant to suit up and fight alongside Cap. That got changed too.
Man, it feels like a lot was left on the cutting room floor or just completely reworked.
It really does. And this is where it gets super interesting, right? All these huge shifts, characters losing powers, plot lines changing, villains getting nerfed. It really points towards that shoot now, figure it out later approach.
Like the core story wasn't fully locked down?
Or maybe the creative direction just kept changing. But what does that constant rejigging do to the final film's consistency and to the whole interconnected universe?
Yeah, how do you maintain a clear vision through all that? It sounds tough.
It's incredibly challenging. It risks making the final film feel disjointed, maybe even confusing, if different parts were made with different goals in mind.
Yet despite all that behind-the-scenes chaos and the mixed reviews on the story, the sources seem pretty united on the lead performances. Anthony Mackie as the new Captain America really landed, didn't he?
Oh, absolutely. Mackie got a lot of praise. Critics pointed to how charismatic he was, how empathetic, how relatable Sam Wilson felt. The film apparently does a good job showing his struggle, trying to live up to that shield, especially since he's not a super soldier like Steve Rogers. He's human.
And that comes across in his fighting style, too, I heard.
You guys say it's more grounded, hand-to-hand, using the wings, using the shield tactically. It feels different, more vulnerable. He's often outmatched, but his determination is what makes him Cap.
That sounds compelling. And then the other big one, Harrison Ford as Thunderbolt Ross. Big shoes to fill, legacy character. How did he do?
Universally acclaimed, pretty much. People said he brought this amazing gravitas, this weariness, real emotional depth to Ross.
Wow.
Critics were saying he nearly steals the show, that he just elevates every scene he's in. Even the Red Hulk transformation apparently got some chuckles just from the sheer wildness of seeing Harrison Ford go full rage monster.
Yeah, I can picture that.
But beyond the spectacle, he apparently made Rux feel more layered. Exploring his past mistakes, his regret about his daughter Betty, made him more than just a military obstacle.
So it sounds like Mackie and Ford really anchored the film emotionally.
Definitely seems like they were the strongest pillars.
So even with all the criticisms about the plot or the production, do those performances make it worth watching? What really stands out to you about Sam's journey here? Is it that humanity, that struggle?
I think those performances provide a really solid core, yeah. Now, thinking about the bigger picture, how does Brave New World fit into the MCU's ongoing story?
Right. It tried to be a political thriller like Winter Soldier, but sources say it kind of backed off, didn't really engage with tough political issues.
Yeah, the consensus seems to be it aimed for that vibe, but felt ultimately apolitical, maybe a bit empty in that regard.
Yeah.
Lacked the sharp edge Winter Soldier had.
But it did connect a lot of dots from past projects, right?
Oh, for sure. It's basically a sequel to The Incredible Hulk in many ways, bringing back Ross, Stearns, Betty, which is kind of amazing after all this time.
Yeah.
And it clearly follows up on the Falcon and the Winter Soldier series, Sam's Journey, Joaquin Torres, Isaiah Bradley. Plus, it finally deals with that giant celestial sticking out of the ocean from Eternals.
Okay, good. That's been hanging there for a while.
And that celestial is key, because it leads to maybe the biggest reveal. Adamantium.
The adamantium from the
The
comic.
very same. The movie apparently explains it's an element mined from the Celestial's body. And suddenly, you've got massive geopolitical implications. President Ross wants a treaty to share it fairly.
Whoa, okay, connecting that dot, that's huge. Adamantium means Wolverine can't be far behind, right? Weapon X, all of that.
It opens the door wide open. How it's history, how mutants fit in, it's all on the table now.
And think about the tension with Wakanda or Talokan. Now there are two super metals everyone's going to be scrambling for.
Exactly. It sets up a whole new global power struggle.
Yeah.
And the film also clarifies the Avengers situation.
Are they a thing right now?
Explicitly, no. The team isn't active. But Ross wants to restart it, and Sam Wilson is clearly being positioned as the leader for the new lineup.
Any hints who might be on that team?
Sources mention quite a few possibilities. Joaquin Torres, Yelena Belova, Kamala Khan, Kate Bishop, Cassie Lang, Shang-Chi, Wong, maybe even some Hulks. It feels like they're planting seeds.
Interesting. And what about Bucky? I heard something surprising about his path.
Yeah, this was unexpected. Apparently, James Bucky Barnes is on track to become a U.S. congressman.
Seriously? From Winter Soldier to Capitol Hill.
It seems so. It suggests society in the MCU is ready to accept his redemption. The huge character evolution.
That's actually really cool. Less expected than just being a sidekick again.
Right. Though one little mystery. After Ross resigns as president, they don't name the vice president who takes over.
Oh, just an unnamed president.
Yeah. Leaves you wondering if that person will matter later, or if it's just a placeholder.
Ah.
A bit odd for such a key role.
So bringing it all together, Brave New World comes out during this tricky time for Marvel, right? People talking about a slump, a need for course correction.
Definitely. Sources describe it as a pit stop, an attempt to right the ship after some disappointments. The feeling is the studio needs consistent hits again. Big ones. Thunderbolts, Fantastic Four have a lot riding on them.
The pressure is definitely on.
No doubt.
So looking at everything, the mixed reviews, the production struggles, the strong performances, the future setups, what's the final verdict on Brave New World's place in the MCU? Is it a necessary, maybe messy, step towards something better? Or does it signal deeper problems Marvel needs to solve?
I think our deep dive shows it's complicated. It's got high points, especially Mackie and Ford delivering those really nuanced performances. There's action, spectacle, but it also clearly struggles with consistency, pacing, maybe even its core identity, thanks to that turbulent production. It really embodies the challenges of keeping this huge machine running smoothly and creatively satisfying everyone.
So the film leaves us with questions not just about, Sam's future as Cap or who the new Avengers will be, but something bigger maybe. Like in this age where everyone talks about superhero fatigue, is serviceable or slightly empty actually good enough anymore?
Right.
Or does Marvel need to really find that brave new world of consistent top-level quality, push the envelope again to keep people truly invested? What do you need to see in the next phase to feel that old excitement fully return?
That's the big question hanging over the franchise now.
See you again in the next episode of this deep dive.